Welcome to Issues and Answers with your host, Diane. Issues and Answers is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. And now, Issues and Answers with your host, Diane.
Welcome to the program. I'm Diane, and Happy New Year to you and to your family. Thanks for watching this program. We've heard about it before, and if you're like me, you're perhaps tired of hearing about it. New Mexico oftentimes ranks to the bottom of every good list. We're last. We're 50th. Sometimes if they count Puerto Rico, I think we're 51. How can we be 51 in education? We're last or poorly results when we look at the math scores, the reading scores, the science, the language. We know through the years, and I've been doing this program for over 25 years, that we're pouring more and more money into education. Some people say we're throwing it with no results. The results are not improving. So what do you think can be done? What do you, New Mexico, think? Well, Think New Mexico, a results-oriented think tank serving our community, our state, is thinking about it, has thinking about it. What do you think about smaller class size for kids when they're trying to read? The teacher has more time to pay attention if a class size is 20 students rather than 30, 33. What about being more practical in our education, making sure that the teachers who are teaching our kids have experience in the classroom prior to graduation? There's a number of things that Think New Mexico has been thinking about. And on this show, we have Mandi Torrez, who is the Education Reform Director, who is going to share everything that Think New Mexico thinks it needs to be done to improve education in New Mexico. Please stay with us as we meet Mandi Torrez right after this.
You want to feel important. You want to be a part of something bigger, something that matters and can help change things.
You want to feel like you belong. We know. We felt that way too, and that's why we did something about it.
We aren't just Army National Guard soldiers.
We are normal people just like you.
And together, we can make a difference.
Take on your legacy. Visit NationalGuard.com to find out more.
Yes, I'm smiling because it's a new year, new beginning, new legislative session, and Think New Mexico has some, I don't know if they're new ideas, they're ideas we've been talking about for years, but they have a package of ideas of reforming New Mexico education for results. And in the past, Think New Mexico has gotten results and programs that they've worked on with the legislature to pass. Well, now it's education reform, and I think there are four main highlights. And Mandi Torrez is with us. She's the Director of Education Reform with Think New Mexico. You're excited as well, Mandi.
I am. Of course, I'm excited. I was an educator in the classroom for nearly a decade, and I've moved worked at the public education department for a bit, and I've been with Think New Mexico for a little over a year. The report that they had put out really just sort of outlines across the system, because it's a complex system, this education system that we have. There's so many moving parts. There's so many different needs. Every community has different needs. And so we really just had to look and say, what could benefit everybody and what can we do now? The state has done a lot of things. They've put a lot of good things in place, but a lot of those things are going to have to take time. Like with the structured literacy and making sure that our teachers know how to teach reading and that they understand how kids' brains work when they read. And so,
and these are things that are just taken for granted as a parent. You're thinking that in the College of Education, they're taught this to teach how to read. I mean, you're just expecting that's something they're learning, but not necessarily was the case.
Absolutely. And it wasn't that they weren't learning how, they were just learning it a different way. And I think the research has shown that this other way, this structured literacy, is a better way. And so I think it's really just sort of a mind shift. A shift in the thinking of how we teach reading. And the research shows this is just a better way of doing it, and because of how how kids' brains work when they learn. So
can you touch upon just briefly what that change is about teaching reading?
Sure. So in the past, we really sort of focused on this thing called balanced literacy. And there were, we were kind of teaching kids about strategies that struggling readers will actually use when they don't know how to read. So looking at a text and say, oh, look at the picture. If you can't figure out the word, what is the picture? What's in the picture? What might that word say based on the picture?
That's what we did in the past.
That's what we were doing in the past, or reading the sentence. What word might make sense there that starts with this letter, and can you figure it out in that way? And structured literacy isn't just about that sort of reading piece. It's about writing, it's about all sorts of things. But I think that the piece that people really understand is the phonics of it, making sure that kids know how to sound out words and that they know letter sound correspondences.
And that's what Think New Mexico wants to go back to.
And that's what the state has gone back to. And so that's just an example.
That's how I learned to read with phonics. I never looked at a picture, but
and even as a parent, with my own children learning how to read, you want to make sure they know the sounds and teach them those things and the sneaky E and those sorts of things. So the state is doing that. Those things take time to sort of, train our teachers and make sure that they're getting this. I think the professional development takes like 80 hours, and teachers are still teaching while they're doing this professional development. So those sorts of things take time, and it's going to take time for us to see the results. But there are things that we can do now that could affect, change what's happening in the classroom tomorrow. And I think that's a lot of what we're focused on with our report and our efforts.
And I believe there are 4 main areas, and I'm going to start with number 4, at least that I was given by Fred Nathan, the director, because it's the easiest one. It's the simplest, and it's the one that kind of just like, oh, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Limiting class size in these critical years, 1st through 3rd grade, when these students, our kids, are supposed to learn how to read. Instead of having 33 kids in the classroom, what about limiting it to 20?
So that's what our proposal is, to just have a cap across the board for elementary. Right now we have a cap on kindergarten classes. So that's the only class grade that has a cap. However, we have this system that allows districts waivers. So we actually dug into the research, and 32% of our kindergarten classes are actually above 20, even though the law says that they should be at 20. The other grades, it's a little
because there's a waiver to allow certain circumstances to go above the cap.
Right, if they don't have the money to hire another teacher and they're only one over, or if they are having trouble finding the spacing. There's lots of issues of why that could happen. But we really want to cap because, I'll try to explain it quickly, but right now we have averages. So between 1st grade and 3rd grade, you have to have an average of 22 students. So, and what we've found in looking at the research is, okay, you might have really small 1st grade classes, but then you have these huge 3rd grade classes, but they're still within the average because it all averages out. And the same thing between the 4th and 6th grade band. The average is supposed to be 24. And we found a class as high as 40 4th graders.
Wait. How many?
40, yeah. And
40 kids in a classroom.
Yeah, in an elementary
with one
classroom,
teacher.
With one teacher. And so I can tell you as a teacher, the largest class I ever had was 26 4th graders, and the smallest I ever had was 15 3rd graders. And I'm telling you, that year with those 15 3rd graders was just amazing. They showed so much growth. I, as a teacher, felt at my best because I could give them the attention that they needed. I could connect with families more easily because I had more time to do that. I wasn't coming home completely stressed out. And we're just hearing a lot of our teachers are just burnt out, and they're leaving the classroom. And so we also
because they're not happy about this.
Yeah,
they're not
exactly.
happy about the results.
And we're just looking at elementary. We hear about the class size issues at the high school level as well, just crowded classrooms, kids sitting on the floor. Eventually, we'd like to move beyond elementary, but we really said, we've got to get our youngest kids reading and get them their foundations. Even as a 3rd grade teacher, I would get students who were reading at 1st grade level. And that's not okay. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can in those early years to get our students reading and doing basic stuff.
Where were you teaching, in Albuquerque, Mandi?
I taught at Placitas Elementary, which is Bernalillo Public Schools.
What, as an educator in the classroom, and when you received a student who was reading at a 1st grade level in 3rd grade, what did you think back then? Of course, with Think New Mexico, in all this documentation and research, you found out a lot more, but what did you think as a teacher back then?
It was hard, and
did you think the other teacher wasn't doing their job?
No, absolutely not. Every teacher works hard, but some kids just need extra support, and sometimes, at least at my school for a while, we didn't have a reading interventionist to come in and help. So when you have 20 kids in your classroom, when you have a bunch of kids struggling, you have kids on what we call IEPs, individualized education plans, which is for special education. Teachers get overwhelmed easily.
But what did you think? What did you think these kids didn't know how to read?
I think that the teachers didn't have this, the materials and the support to be able to get it done. And coming out of the colleges of ed, again, I think we weren't focusing on the right way to teach kids. And so is it the fault of the teachers, how they were taught how to teach kids how to read? Absolutely not. And so that, of course, ties into something that we'll talk about a little bit later.
And so back to you as third grade teacher with these students didn't know how to read at level. What did you do?
So you really have to, it's hard when you're sort of managing behaviors, but you try to do small groups. I would always do after school tutoring with my kids and would try to get as many of them there as I could. So, it required putting in that extra time because they just need targeted intervention. And they just needed that attention I could give, 4 or 5 kids at a time, and I could sit down and I could hear and listen and see where they were struggling. And, when I would ask them about their comprehension, I could understand, like, where are they going wrong? And that's hard to do when you have a whole class and you're managing a lot of different things.
So the number, and has research, I kind of interrupted, does research show that 20 is the good number for, not an average, but the 20 in the 1st through 3rd grade is a good number?
We think it's a good number. Ideally, there's research. There was a big project in Tennessee. I think they called it the STAR project that really looked at class sizes. And they really said, ideal is like 15 to 18. And some states do cap. A lot of states cap K to 3 at 18 or K to 3 at 20. And so we're not asking for anything that other people haven't already figured out. But yeah, that number, just those smaller, I think 20 is a good number. It's a good even number. It makes it manageable. Now, I've been out of the classroom for a little while, and so I think after the pandemic, we just saw some different behaviors from kids. And that's what we hear a lot from the teachers too, that they're just seeing all of these behaviors that they haven't seen before. So now they're trying to manage the behaviors, plus the fact that kids are behind, and just the wide range. You still have kids who have caught up and are doing great. So now you have teachers with these kids who are gifted and doing amazing, and there's so many different levels of what you're trying to teach.
What do you think the chance of this passing, this legislature? And has it been introduced by, I think, New Mexico in previous legislation?
We sort of worked with the teachers union, the NEA, last year. We sort of kind of started the legislation and handed it off to them because it's one of their big issues. Because of course they see the need that our teachers are leaving and we need to keep our teachers. So it's also a recruitment and retention sort of issue. We've also got to make teaching look more as an attractive profession. If you're a student and you're sitting in a classroom, a large classroom, and you see how stressed out that your teacher is, and you see that you're not getting the attention that you need, does that make you want to become a teacher? Absolutely not. So we've also got to make it look more. Yeah, it's it's like this connected circle, and so we've really got to, we've got to do something to support.
And
our
there's so much
teachers.
money being poured into education over the past. I've worked in state government. 25, going on 30 years, had worked, and know that we pour more and more money. So it sounds like there's enough money to limit these class sizes. What would be the problem not agreeing to do this?
So cost is an issue. So we want to phase it in. So we would phase it in a year at a time. So the first year would be just first grade. You just got to get your first grade classes to 20 because it is a little bit of a cost. There's also we want to give time for our teacher pipeline to get better because we do have a teacher shortage. And so we want to make sure that people have the teachers to be able to hire. Again, which is why we're also advocating for colleges of education.
Okay, let's move into that. Changing the College of Education teacher residency enrollment has been down, I guess. Teachers, maybe 75%. Tell me a little bit about this other proposal that I think New Mexico is interested in, Mandi.
Right, so we've talked with deans of education. We've met with UNM and the UNM president and just sort of shared our concerns. And these aren't our concerns either. When we hear superintendents talk, we hear them. We've heard Superintendent Elder talk about, the need for teachers to come out of their programs day one ready, is sort of what they call it. And again, it goes back to being able to teach, knowing things like structured literacy. Social emotional learning is sort of a big kind of buzz phrase in education right now, making sure that our teachers know how to do that, how to help our students regulate their emotions and understand their feelings and how they're doing in the classroom and how that relates. If you're frustrated with your learning, what are some techniques you can do to sort of calm yourself down so that you can learn? Those sorts of things. All of these things, the Beth math practices. We talk about culturally and linguistically responsive instruction, making sure our teachers know how to connect with our students and our families. So all
Oh
of
my
these
gosh,
things,
all of these things.
it's so many things.
I thought we just taught math and reading and writing.
Yeah, that's the hard thing about teaching. It involves so many things. But anyway, we want to make sure that our new teachers coming in are getting those things. But also the main piece of it is requiring what we call a residency. Just like you would think of as like a medical residency, where teachers have at least a year in the classroom, they're doing hands-on, they're seeing how it works, they're understanding. A lot of people don't understand that when you're a teacher and you're in front of a classroom, you're making decisions like left and right. Do I move on? They're not getting this. What can I do? Do I just stop this lesson and blow it up because it's not working? They're not getting it. You're dealing with behavior issues. And so you can't get those sort of things, that sort of experience when you're just learning from a book. Now, understanding theory and those things are all important, but the best way to learn how to be a teacher is to be in the classroom. And when teaching was my second career, so when I switched careers, I went back to get my master's degree. I sort of created my own kind of 2-year residency. My program required me to be in the classroom for a year.
That's for a master's degree.
That was for a master's degree. So I was in a 3rd grade classroom for a year with a master teacher. And then I sort of slowed down because I was switching careers. I said, I don't want to rush through this. I want to get it right. And so I spent another year at the same school working in a special education resource room because I was getting a dually license in elementary and special ed. So I really had 2 years of experience before I had my own classroom. And it was just so valuable. And so
Were you paid for these 2 years?
The first year I wasn't. It was just part of the program. The second year, because I was sort of hired as what we would call it was in Boston. They call them paraprofessionals. Here we call them educational assistants. So I did have an educational assistant salary that second year. But we already have teacher residencies in place here where they do get paid $35,000 stipend to be in the classroom.
But part of the College of Education, or is this after they graduate?
This is part of the College of Education.
We have that currently.
We have that currently.
So in their 4th year, 3rd or 4th year, they get paid $35,000
Right.
in residency.
Right.
Currently.
But the money that we have only funds about maybe a third, less than half of those of all of our teachers going through the traditional prep programs to do that. So
wouldn't everybody want to do? Wouldn't all these student teachers want that?
Yeah, and there are some issues. You have some people maybe going through the program who are older. One of the issues that we've heard about is they can't get insurance. So that they haven't been able to get insurance through this stipend program, and so they have to have a different job where they can have insurance. And so figuring out how to get them,
so they couldn't teach full time because they're.
And so I think some of those issues are starting to get fixed. And there are other programs too, like the federal government has an apprenticeship program that comes with federal dollars.
I thought previous years maybe they needed 3 months in the classroom. I mean, I'm talking about decades ago.
Yeah.
Teachers going through the College of Education, didn't they need some classroom experience before graduating in the past?
Yeah, so everybody gets what they call student teaching, but it may be 10 weeks, it may be 12 weeks, just depending on the program. But we want something that lasts an entire year.
Okay.
Because I got to see everything the whole year, prepping what goes into prepping for a new year, sitting in on parent conferences, on IEP meetings, like all of these things that maybe you can't cram into, just 10 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever. So if you have an entire year of being in the classroom with kids, you can really get
different. So think New Mexico is proposing this.
Sure.
What is it called? An internship?
A residency.
Residency.
Yeah.
4th year of their
just
four-year
their final
program?
year.
Their
we don't
final?
want to say
Yeah.
four, just as they're
It might be
finishing.
their 5th year, 6th year.
Yeah,
So
you never
final year,
Yeah.
it would be full time in the classroom.
And you get paid for it. But right now we just would need to expand the funding for that, right? Because it doesn't cover enough for everybody to be part of it. So, and the research shows, we think it's a great return on investment because the research shows that when you go through these residency programs, teachers that do tend to stay longer in the profession, right? Because they're better prepared. They know what to expect. They're not coming in that first year, deer caught in headlights, not knowing anything. So they tend to stay longer. So it's a good return on investment because we're just lose so many teachers.
And I think 40 other states require this currently, a residency. 40 other states?
No, it's not. I don't believe it's.
Oh,
I
not
actually
that
don't
many.
know on that.
Okay.
I'm not sure if anybody requires it.
Oh, that's something.
Yeah,
Oh,
but more and
others-
more people are trying to implement it.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about, Mandy, regarding this residency?
It's just a great for teachers. Like I said, I sort of created my own, and it really gives teachers a chance to see what teaching is all about.
How much would this cost the state?
Well, right now we're spending about somewhere between 13 and 14 million for it to get about a third, a little less than half. So, at least doubling that cost. Yeah.
To have that done. Yeah. The 40%, the 40 states requirement is regarding school boards, school board candidates to disclose their contributions. And that's what 40 states require them to disclose all of their contributions. Here in New Mexico, I think we have a limitation. Maybe 84 school districts don't have to disclose at all. So tell me a little bit about why I think New Mexico thinks it's so important that school board members disclose their contributions.
Sure. So within our school board's legislation, it's actually, we have several things because we really just looked up and down the system of, we want to make sure every level that we're having accountability, that we're looking at improving at every level. So at the school board level, a lot of people, I think that school board members are sometimes undervalued because we don't really see, the decisions that they make are so important. So the first thing that we talked about was training. Right now, school board members are only required to have 5 hours of training. And a lot of that is largely on legal issues. So we really wanted to say, well, school board members collectively, they're spending about $4 billion, all this money that we're putting in. They should have some training on how to do that, on how to best spend it, on how we should be spending it. So training on things like that, training on how to support our superintendents. Right now, our average superintendent tenure is less than 2 years. And so it's really hard to get
That's in the state of New Mexico.
In the state of New Mexico.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are they going around to each district? I mean, what's the circle? 2 years, the average of a school superintendent?
Absolutely. So it's really hard to get anything going and follow through when you have new people constantly coming in and changing ideas. And so that's one of the things that we want to fix also. But with the campaign contributions, and it's actually 44 states require all of their candidates to say who's contributing to their campaign. And right now, as you said, we only have about 4 districts that are doing that because you have to have 12,000 or more before you have to disclose students before you disclose your campaign contributions. And we just think everybody should have to. We should just have transparency. We should know what's happening in school board races. And so that's, we just want some transparency with that, as well as live webcasting. We think every meeting should be allow parents to, if your parents are busy, but if you can log on to the school board meeting when you're cooking dinner and you can still be involved and engaged.
Very good.
That's great.
As we warned you, this show goes fast.
Yes.
As does the school year. Goes fast.
It does go fast.
A few minutes left. Let's talk about the graduation requirement changes.
Sure. Absolutely. So last year there was a bill that was introduced, and it actually made it through the legislature, but the governor vetoed it. I think her message was really just about rigor, and she was worried about sort of lowering our standards. So what that bill did is it would require, right now students are required to have 24 credits. That bill wanted to go down to 22. And we just felt like we should sort of, we're last in the in the country and everything. We should feel like we should sort of just, we should be maintaining high standards. But really what we were focused on is making it relevant. What we would hear from kids is, what they were learning that, they weren't being able to use it. It didn't matter to them. And so the Gates Foundation did a study nationwide and asked the dropouts, well, why did you drop out? And a lot of them said they were bored. And so we really thought, well, let's look at what can make school more exciting and relevant. And
teach them how to make money. Teach them how to earn money. I don't think they'd be bored about that, right?
Sure.
These kids dropping out because they're bored. Well, what if we told you you could earn money by learning what we're teaching you?
Absolutely.
I think that would change their boredom.
Yeah, for sure. And so along those lines, we wanted to require that all students take a career and technical education course, which it encompasses so many things. You could take a film course. You could take a culinary arts course. And a lot of people, when you say CTE, what we call it, they think about plumbing and electricity, which are great jobs. You can make a lot of money in that. But it also includes STEM jobs, engineering, the medical field. Teaching is one of mine. Of course, teaching falls under CTE, and we need more teachers. So if we require that, we're going to get more kids trying these things. Like maybe they never thought about teaching, but they take a course.
A 4-year college. The high school.
This is the high school.
High school 4-year.
Sure.
The 4 years of high school.
Sure.
I used to call it the VOTEC type schools, vocational technical schools.
Yeah, but every school is really beefing up. We're putting more money into career and technical education.
Okay.
Because it does encompass so many things, like nursing. We have this, we're having issues with our medical industry and having enough staffing. And so exposing
this is requiring requiring a course in this.
Yeah, anything. And like I said, there's such a wide range that students shouldn't have trouble finding something that interests them. We also want to require financial literacy. Another low ranking that we have is we're ranked 47th in the nation for financial literacy. And that's relevant to every single kid. Every single kid at some point is going to be in charge of their finances, so they should be able to know a little bit about it. So we want financial
I took a class
literacy.
like that decades ago, and that affected my life because it was practical.
Absolutely practical.
I needed
relevant.
it every day.
Yeah.
2 minutes left. What else?
So also civics, we want every kid to make sure that they're getting civics.
That's not a requirement now?
It's not a requirement now. And so we want that in there. We also want
because we need good politicians, we need good community leaders, we need people to know about their state government,
and to want
their federal
to be
government.
involved. Yeah, we want our kids to be involved in their communities.
And not to make it so foreign.
Yeah.
That they can, if they know how the system works, be educated in it, they can be a participant in their government too.
Yeah, and knowing the system, not being afraid of it, those sorts of things. So we also looked at PE, the proposal that was put forward wanted to drop PE to half a credit. We think it should stay at a full credit. And we also want to add a half a credit of health. We've been hearing that our kids are in this mental health crisis. There's lots of research coming out on that. And mental health, of course, is just part of it. There's so many different things to health. So we think that should be a full credit for our students, because you can't, your whole life is based on your health, right? Like how well you're doing. So our students should be as well informed as they can be.
Very
about
practical, wonderful ideas.
Sure.
What do you think of the success? We have 30 seconds left, Mandi Torrez.
Well, we'll see. We think the school boards is getting a lot of interest. And so we hope that class size gets some interest. We did a quick poll. 96% of people that polled said yes, class size is very important to student success, and 83% said they would support legislation that would cap classes at 20. So we know it's what parents want. I, as a parent, it's what I want for my kids.
Of course.
And so, we've got to try at every level. What can we do to get us
What can the
moving?
public do to help you out?
So you can write your legislators. You can go to our website, thinknewmexico.org. We have an action center. We have little letters there that you can just kind of sign, or you can personalize and make it your own. But if any of these things resonate with you, please reach out to your legislators, to the governor, and say, we really want to see this legislation get through, because we need support for our students.
Very good. Mandi Torrez, thank you so much. What an asset you are to Think New Mexico. And of course, we know Think New Mexico is an asset to our state. So appreciate it. Happy New Year to you and your family.
Happy New Year to you.
And best of luck during this legislative session. Thank you for watching the program. I'm Diane Kinderwater. Make it a great week with your family. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Fire threatens everything in its path. When it threatens our communities, we respond. We bring the fight to the front line. The Army National Guard stands ready, because sometimes the front lines are in our own backyard. We will always be there when our community needs us the most. Find out more about serving your community part-time by visiting NationalGuard.com.
Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinderwater is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. To comment on today's program or to purchase a copy of any Issues and Answers program, visit sunbroadcasting.org or call us at 505-345-1991.